Good evening and welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio. It's my pleasure to be here with you. We've got Kirk as well. How are you, Kirk?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I want to begin with the news out of Washington. Most of you are aware that the United States, via Trump, decided that we could contribute peace and justice to the world by bombing Syria. We sent 59 cruise missiles to attack an Air Force base that we claim was the launching point for Syrian jets that carried sarin gas. I have some issues with that, Kirk, and I'm happy to hear you discuss it. But the reason that I'm going to begin the program here is that any time there is news that intersects with Yahweh's testimony, whether it be somebody that's part of a religious or political institution doing something that proves that they ought not be trusted, or it's something that plays right into prophecy, I think it's our responsibility to comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
This plays right into prophecy. Yeshua 17 and 18 speaks of the utter destruction of Damascus and the fall of Syria. And that leads directly to thinning Israel at the waist, forcing Israel to give up the Judea and Samaria, the West Bank as it's called, thinning the country at the waist so it's no longer defensible, and then to Magog 1, where millions of Muslims flood into Israel, screaming and shouting and killing and raping and plundering.
Mm-hmm.
So that prophecy we know. And we know that in 18, Yahweh specifically says that it's the United States and its braggadocious, arrogant, condescending way of imposing what it considers to be its superiority on the world via its Navy and its ambassadors. And so we had the U.S. Navy launch these cruise missiles into an Air Force base just outside of Damascus, claiming that the Syrians had used sarin gas. They had bombed civilians, so we should bomb them. Is bombing a moral answer to bombing?
No, sir. Not at all.
The last time that there was a chemical attack in Syria, did Assad perpetrate it, or did the Sunni jihadists?
I recall most of the evidence was the Sunni jihadist.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. It was back in a time where I was doing this Shattering Myths program, so I probably spent 10 hours researching that, and it was obvious to me, based upon that research, it was the Sunni jihadists. And yet the Obama administration blamed Assad. This time, I'm not doing Shattering Myths, so I have not done an investigation. So I do not know, quite frankly. And I do not care. I've come to recognize, as I've always recognized, that Assad is a scumbag. And you can principally label him a scumbag because he has tortured virtually every day for the last 2 years 100,000 Syrians. That puts you right up there with the greatest scumbags of all time.
Mm-hmm.
100,000 people brutally tortured every day for that long a period of time. So, is he capable of gassing little children? Absolutely. But the issue I have with attacking him and having so many people say, the end game needs to be to force Assad out of Syria.
To replace with
what? What did we learn with Vietnam? We replaced the Vietnamese government, and the government we replaced it with was far worse than the one that we ousted. And then ultimately, we squandered 50,000 lives, making a bad situation substantially worse.
Mm-hmm.
What did we learn in Afghanistan? I mean, the most respected Afghani government was the Russian-backed government because it was secular. And there were great advances in that country during that secular government, but it was the United States that armed the Afghani Mujahideen and also rented the Pakistani Taliban, arming them to attack that government and oppose it. And it was the Afghani Mujahideen that ultimately prevailed. And they were the worst government in the modern history of Afghanistan. They were replaced by the Taliban, and the Taliban were considered good by comparison to the government that America facilitated. Right? And now America then goes in to eliminate the Taliban government, and the government that it imposed is amongst the worst in the world by any standard. And the people are longing for a return of the Taliban. And look at Iraq, the best dictator. He was a thug. He was a scumbag of a man. But he was the best dictator in the Islamic world. And the United States thoughtlessly went in and deposed him, had him killed. And look what replaced it, a government that is completely controlled out of Tehran by Islamic Ayatollahs.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 million people died.
Yes.
Making a bad situation worse. And then we armed the Sunnis and we created a civil war with our weapons. And that war then went across the border after Iraq was completely broken and became the Islamic State versus Assad. And then in Libya, we didn't like Gaddafi, and thoughtlessly not learning the lessons, we bombed him, and we turned Libya into ground zero for terrorist jihadists worldwide. And now in Syria, all we want to do is replace Assad, not aware that there are only two options. The Iranian Hezbollah, which is probably the most anti-Semitic terrorist group in the history of the world, the Islamic State. A group so heinous that it kidnaps Christian and Zoroastrian girls, strips them naked, and sells them at slave auctions as sex toys. We depose Assad, and he is a horrible human being. The only two organizations that have any chance of replacing him are far worse. So what in the hell are we doing? Bombing the Syrian military. The Russians are right in this regard, and only to the extent of Assad's vastly better than the option. And how can we claim, as so many are doing, that we can fight the Islamic State if we're also bombing the principal rival to the Islamic State?
I don't mean to laugh. It's just a comical assertion. I mean, you just go, what?
What? You know, here we are in Syria, arming the Kurds and arming the Turks, and the Kurds are using the weapons that we're supplying to fight a war with one another. I mean, we're absolutely out of our mind insane. And then Trump, in his speech, says, you know, we need the wisdom of God to rid the world of the scourge of terrorism and to use American force to bring justice and peace to the world. He's out of his mind.
How do you get rid of something if you arm it? I mean, we're arming it.
Yeah.
This is not
the fact of the matter is that while we continue to invade the Islamic world and arm both sides in conflicts in the Islamic world, the Islamic world is going to be the most murderous place on earth. And the only solution to this is to quarantine the Islamic world, to stop buying their oil, to stop selling them weapons, to stop giving them weapons, and to stop trying to nation build. It does not work. We're making a bad situation worse. I mean, it's insane what we're doing.
I'm trying to find the nation we built that was such a model that shows that as an approach.
I do not know.
Was it the great Indian nations that we sent off into
I am absolutely disgusted. And then on top of that, we're doing war games as if we're going to invade or attack North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me how that's going to work out. What happened the last time we invaded North Korea? Didn't we lose 40,000 Americans, squandered their lives for a stalemate?
Absolutely.
And now that they have nuclear weapons, we want to invade again?
Well, somebody who has no problem with using them because he has nowhere to go. When you put somebody in a corner, what's he going to do?
You know, I had this sense from the first time Trump opened his mouth as president, and that the man was a con. That virtually everything he promised to get elected, he was going to do the opposite when elected, particularly as it pertains to Israel. And that 4 years into his term, if he survives it, America is going to be in a very, very dangerous place. Americans already have too much patriotic ego, and this man is whipping it up. I am very concerned for my country. During this week, for those who have been part of the email distributions, Kirk, which you have been, and have listened to our last week's show, you know that I began last week's show saying that I am vehemently opposed to conspiracies and to fake news. And the primary reason, I just want to make certain that everybody understands why that is the case. I have a very low regard for my own worth and own abilities. And at the very best, I see myself as a dented and dirty implement. And yet, for reasons that can have nothing to do with me, I have been afforded more insights into the Torah, Yahweh's nature, his plan, his family, his guidance, his invitations to meet, and his prophetic revelations than certainly anyone that I'm aware of. And maybe there has been somebody else. I have not come across them. And the insights are profound, and they are many, and they are unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm often prone to wonder why. And I want to tell you the conclusion that I have had since I first began this process a dozen years ago.
Okay.
We are told by Yahweh that during the very last of the last days, Yehudim, the Israelites, come to reject their government, come to reject their military, come to reject their rabbis, their religion. And they do a complete about-face, and they come to recognize Yahweh as Yahweh, his covenant as it was intended, his Torah as those instructions were originally proclaimed and not as the Talmud.
Mm-hmm.
They, to be accepted by Yahweh, to make the statements that they are said in the prophetic text to make, they have to do a 180-degree turn, both secular and religious Jews. And it's a complete about-face, a total abandonment of what they have been to accept Yahweh as he actually is. How are they going to know that? Yahweh never says. He does say that their situation becomes so dire that they have nowhere else to turn. But, rats on a sinking ship may look
Mm-hmm.
for a way out.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of them knowing the only way just is, well, it's impossible then, based upon what they are told as it relates to Israeli politics and the Jewish rabbinical religion. So how do they come to know the truth? And so I've come to the conclusion that Yahweh didn't reveal these things, which, by the way, there's no special personal insights here. 100% of what I've learned and shared come from the Torah, period. Torah, prophets, and Psalms. End of conversation. It's all there for anyone to uncover. But there is no reason other than, Yahweh says it's there, you're welcome to find it. I don't think that we have been afforded these insights to reach Goyim. Now, I'm glad that a lot of Goyim have come to know Yahweh based upon what we've learned.
Mm-hmm.
But Yahweh's focus, his love, has always been his chosen people. And we're going to go from thousands to perhaps millions in the blink of an eye. And as I think of what else exists to help awaken them, and I realize there is perhaps nothing at this point, I also realize that Yehudim, Israelites, are the smartest people on earth, the smartest race on earth, no question about it.
No question.
Represent a tiny fraction of 1% of the population and about 35-40% of the world's most important innovations and discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to ask you, over the course of history, who has been the greatest victim of conspiracy and fake news?
The Jews.
Yeah, absolutely. If we come with a message that's intertwined with conspiracy and fake news, what likelihood do you think that we would be credible as a witness on behalf of Yahweh to Yehudim and Israelites?
None.
Now,
Truly.
It's clear that the Israelites do not know Yahusha.
Correct.
And they don't know Yahweh at this point. But they sure as hell know that the Christian Jesus bears no resemblance whatsoever to any Yehudim who ever lived. So if we were to partner with Christians to tell this story, we would not be credible, would we?
Not at all.
Really, and
not at all.
They know, and they will come to know that the Talmud is a farce.
Yeah.
They will have to reject it before they come to know Yahweh and accept him. And so if we were to partner, as so many people today do,
mm-hmm.
and the Hebrew roots movement and Messianic Judaism with Rabbinic Judaism and blend Pauline Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism together, if we were to have any from rabbis, we would lose all of our credibility. So, since I know that I am absolutely unworthy, and that Yahweh, while he is happy to have Yehudim choose of our own volition to be adopted into his family, and during this short period of time where, well, certainly I can't say how long the period of time is, but during this period of time where there are so few Yehudim who are desirous of knowing him. Now, we know some that do.
Yes, we do.
Joe Page, the person that's created the websites, we can share this message. He's Yehudim. Dr. Jeff Grill, who has been, I think, was the first person to respond, which was certainly a sign to me that this was indeed the purpose, has made tremendous contributions. And Frank has learned from his DNA that he's a Lowy.
Lowy,
So we have, and of course, one of our favorite people, Lisa.
Yes.
She is a Yahud.
And she gets
and
it.
so there are a number that have come to know Yahweh and who are doing their part to awaken Yisrael.
Their fellow Yehudim, yeah.
But if we're going to be credible to Yahweh's chosen people, which is the primary way that you become useful to Yahweh, then we can't associate with fake news or conspiracy. Jews have been victims of it for far too long, and they're not going to trust anybody who promotes any of it, even if their promotion of it stays clear of anti-Semitism.
That's a good point.
Those are my views.
Point.
That's why I'm so uncompromising on it. And, you know, I have written in these letters, in these responses, that if somebody can prove with material and credible evidence that I'm wrong about Comet Ping Pong Pizza being the center of a pedophile ring managed by the Clintons, or of chemtrails actually being something that is a government plot, or of the 9/11 not being perpetrated by Muslims flying planes into our buildings, but instead by a plot by the U.S. government. If somebody can prove that using credible evidence, and that it is consistent with all other evidence and is not contradicted by far more reasonable conclusions based on the totality of the evidence, then I'll back away. Then my ability to use evidence and reason to form conclusions is so compromised, I'll need to walk away. So those are my thoughts. Kirk, do you have any?
No, I don't think you're in much danger there. I don't think you'll have to walk. But no, it's well put, and that is the thing that was so odd when I read about it initially about the end times from the perspective of going through Yada Yahweh and all, and when you see that he's talking about he's returning for the Yehudim and the Israelites. And you say, well, that destroys all the Christian viewpoint. He's not coming back to embrace the church. I always knew he wasn't doing that. I mean,
oh yeah, you read what I think is the most powerful prediction regarding his return is Yirmiyah, when he is saying that he is going to renew and reestablish his family covenant relationship. And he says specifically that he is coming to do it with Yisrael and with Yehudah. Now, what's so stunning about that is, you know who the book of, by its own admission, the book of Yirmiyah is actually written to?
The Gentiles.
Yeah, it's written to Goyim, Gentiles.
Huh?
And so in the midst of this book written to Gentiles, Yahweh not only condemns the basis of Christmas and Easter and religion, but he specifically says, when I renew and reestablish my covenant, my family relationship, it's going to be with Yisrael and with Yehudah. So shouldn't that tell us that if we want to if we want to do Yahweh's will, if we want to be where he wants us to be, if we want to be useful to him, who should we be trying to awaken, trying to teach, trying to reach out to?
I would go out to the Yehudim, I would think. Yes. Absolutely.
And Yisrael. And of course, that passage is clear that it says that the difference between the existing covenant and the reestablishment, the renewal of the covenant, he's going to write his Torah inside of us. And as well as his name, which now destroys any myth of Christianity. All you have to do is read that statement in context, and Christianity is exposed and condemned, completely destroyed.
Right.
Now, it's interesting here, the statements, Kirk, that you and I were pursuing before we were distracted was Yahshua 2. And I want to just begin, and we'll do a summary of Yahshua 2, and then talk about what the implications are of Zion. But this is how it begins. This is the word that beneficially, Yahshua, which means salvation is from Yahweh, son of Amos, which means trustworthy and steadfast, observed in the prophetic vision concerning Washington, D.C. No, I didn't say that.
No.
Concerning Mecca. No, it doesn't say that either. Considering London and Europe. No. Yahudah. This is the prophetic version concerning Yahudah. Relate to Yah and be related to Yah. Concerning the Vatican. No. Jerusalem. So here we're talking, Yah's going to make it very clear. He's talking about the last days. In the last days, his focus is on Yahudah and particularly Jerusalem.
Sure.
Say goodbye to this myth that America is the apple of God's eyes, that he is the new Israel. Say goodbye to the notion the Christian church has inherited the promises to Israel. That's utter nonsense. It's completely refuted by this statement. Then he says, it shall come to pass in the, what, former days?
Last days.
2,000 years ago?
No.
Al-Akaron. In the last days. Firmly established, completed, and enduring. The family home of Yahowah will come to exist in proximity to the summit of the first and foremost mountain of the mountains, lifted up and supported, sustained as part of these elevated places. So where's Yahweh going to build his family home?
Jerusalem. It's always been this way.
Right. And is there anything else that happened on Mount Moriah, which is what he's speaking of?
Everything important happened.
Yeah. Isn't that where the first Passover was celebrated between Abraham, Yishak, Yahweh, and Yosha? And isn't that the place where Dod established his home and then bought the threshing floor?
Threshing field, yes.
Yeah. Do you think the threshing floor is just a coincidence that the area that would become the Temple Mount was a threshing floor?
No, sir, not at all.
What do you do on a threshing floor?
You separate the husk from the wheat.
So you separate that which is worthless
the good from
that
the bad,
which is
yes,
valuable.
if you like. Yes,
Is
that's what
that,
it's nourishing, and that's what it's not.
How about that? Yeah.
Okay.
How do we exercise good judgment and come to know who Yahweh is and what he's offering and what he expects?
Well, you have to carefully consider, closely examine, as we always say, Shamar.
Right. Yeah. Don't you have to separate fact from fiction, know what you can trust and what you shouldn't trust?
And
right.
You have to
That's why it's on a threshing floor. Right. That's why it's on a threshing floor. Well, threshing, by the way, is an act of separation, isn't it?
Yes. Kodesh.
Yep, Kodesh. So 968 BCE, Dod laid the cornerstone of the family home of Yahweh on the threshing floor of what is now the Temple Mount on Mount Moriah, which means to revere Yah. And then exactly 1,000 years later, 20 Yobel, Yosha, in the year 4000 Yah, 33 CE on the Roman pagan calendar, in the fourth millennia of human history, just as it was foretold in the creation story, came and fulfilled, became the living embodiment of all of Yah's promises related to Pesach Matzah, Bakurim, and Shavuot. First four Moed Mikre, fulfilled in the fourth millennia of humankind, after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden, which would then thereby allow all of us who choose to benefit from these meetings to meet and live with Yahweh, as if we were returning to the conditions of the Garden of Eden. And of course, then now 40 Yobel from that time, Yahweh was saying, I'm going to return to the same place and I'm going to build my family home in the last days. When would the last days be? Therefore, following this 6 plus 1 model.
Later.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Pretty easy to calculate at that point.
2033.
Mm-hmm.
So then every Gentile, now this is really interesting. So he's focused on Jerusalem in Yahudah, and he's going to build his family home on the highest summit of the ridgeline of Moriah, which would be the only part of it that is has been unscathed by human clutter. And then he says, every Gentile shall flow forth with a joyful countenance, beaming with happiness and shining brightly. We're part of the family.
Absolutely, we're there.
We're there. And matter of fact, for us to be shining brightly, we're the ones that have come from the four corners of the universe to witness his return. We're light.
Yes.
All this cruddy, dented, dull tool stuff that I revel in now, and that I think
certainly got an upgrade.
Yeah, I think you like being an implement as well, and have a healthy understanding of your place relative to Yahweh's brilliance. We're going to be brilliant. We're going to be the same substance. We're going to come back as light.
Yeah, shining brightly.
And you know what's interesting? He's not saying that Yehudim are coming back in light. Yes, will there be some? Yes.
Some, yes.
Yes, Dr. Jeff's going to be there.
Dr. Jeff will be there.
Frank is going to be there. Lisa, she's going to be beaming brightly. Yes, there'll be Yehudim there. But the majority of those who have accepted the covenant that are going to be part of his return, he's talking about Gentiles going in.
Yes, it's definitely found a home there.
It's us. We're going to be light, joyful, beaming with happiness, shining brightly. And many people who are part of the family shall travel, and they shall say, walk because we can. Of our own volition, ascend to the mountain and to the family home of the God of Jacob, and therefore of Yisrael and of the covenant. And so he can fulfill his will and teach and guide us by means of his ways in order for us to choose to genuinely and continually travel in his manner. You and I both received a letter from Roy that is an analysis of something you said in the last program, which is, what does Tob, which is typically just translated good, what does it actually mean? Yeah, and I think your conclusion was it means fit for the intended purpose. Yeah, fit for the intended purpose. Yeah, effective, beneficial, useful.
Something, a useful implement, if you wish.
Yeah, it's fit as it, it works as it was designed. You know, when we're studying Yahweh's Torah and we're enlightened by him, we in fact are working as we were designed. When we're observant, we are working as we were designed.
You have an intended purpose.
Right, we have an intended purpose to be part of Yahweh's family, and when we do that, we are in fact performing as we were intended. Correct in this regard. And then you also analyzed raw as is that which is ineffective, counterproductive,
impaired, abnormal,
wrong. Yeah, wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Roy sent a recap of that, and I've now added like 10 pages of just analyzing Tob from Yahweh's perspective. And I'm going to do the same thing with Ra from Yahweh's perspective. There's some places where Yah actually juxtaposes Tob and Ra, that which is effective and that which is ineffective, that which is as it was designed to be and that which is the antithesis, is a broken, dysfunctional individual.
For those of us with less intellect than you two, you can still look at the letter on Ra and just as man, as the top, the head, the man, looking at, or a man's view. So you become, if you want to be dysfunctional, go view it the way man views it.
Right. Ra Ain is man's perspective, man's view. From God's point of view, if you accept man's perspective, man's view, you are dysfunctional. You're wrong.
Right.
And Tob happens to be the basis of the Torah, and Yahweh says that his Torah is Tob. So Tob is what makes this functional, desirable. Welcome.
Right.
It's what is a benefit. And now in this particular letter, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that over this weekend I'll spend more time trying to flesh out my response to Roy. And while we agree on Tov and Ra, I just am putting a lot more intensity in. I think he took a simple definition of both and said, therefore, it means this, and I don't want to make that assumption, although the assumption is correct. The conclusion then is correct. I'm just going to provide more basis for it, a little more meat.
But yeah, what you do, you leave no stone unturned. So it's not. I'm pretty sure. You're damn sure.
Yeah, you're really sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you covered it every which way.
Well, every which way. You're going to be really sure that those are appropriate.
So we don't go down some little trail we're not supposed to.
Yeah. And then Roy gets into a discussion of free will, and all I'm going to do there is to say, in terms of gray matter, Roy is smarter than I am, and I would be fairly confident that if we were to go at a debate, Roy would beat me 9 times out of 10. But Roy is remarkable in that when he sent this to me, he says, tell me where you think I'm wrong. And so he's inviting constructive criticism. I disagree with his definition of free will. I don't think there's anything wrong with his definition in terms of animals in general, and therefore humans. But I don't think it's an appropriate definition in the context of Yahowah and our choice to either accept him, reject him, disregard him, oppose him, or lead others away from him. It is from that context, which is the only one I really care about, that I think he's got an invalid definition of free will. But I will back this up by saying that ever since that I have explained that I do not think that Satan has free will. And I think there's a difference between having the option to do something and being free to do it. For example, a grunt in the military can opt to disregard an order, but they're not free to do so. Yeah, they're not free to do so.
Well, I'm not sure that's a good analogy, because he's still a human being versus a tool. The hard part of this conversation would be wherein lies whatever the definition of the malach is, and how much. Yeah,
and that's part of what he is. Yeah, that's part of what Roy brings up. He doesn't like the idea of tool, because tools are typically inanimate objects in reference to the malach. I happen to like tool because I do think that the tool has a pejorative aspect to it that I rather like applying to myself. I really like the idea of degrading my worth as to use the term tool, dented and flawed. I think it's that approach that makes us useful. But I understand why he doesn't like typically an inanimate object and prefers another definition of, and he used the idea of robots with the kind of artificial intelligence, that might represent this. And I kind of like the way that Yahweh presents them. The malach are representatives. They are messengers. They're envoys. They're implements.
They deliver the message.
Right, they deliver the message.
That's what it is.
And so I'm going to redefine what I think the difference is between the option to ignore, reject, or oppose Yahweh, and being free to do so, and what we are free and not free to do, and what the malach are free and not free to do. And so we will we'll play off of that. This is, by the way, none of that is a salvation. None of this is a salvation issue, and no one's going to claim that they're right and the other person is wrong. We're going to have some differences, and we're going to explore those differences. And what I have found, and I think Fred, in a letter I read from him the other day, said this extremely well, is that when he sees a debate between covenant members on an issue, he avoids leaning one way or another, brings it all in until something just resonates, and then he goes and explores it on his own, and he's really good at finding other places where the concept is reinforced in subtle ways.
Mm-hmm. I've been reading his book.
We'll have that discussion, and it'll be available here soon. But the reason I brought this up is that everything here was walk because we can of your own volition, free will.
Right.
Ascend to the mountain, to the house and family of the God of Jacob, and therefore of Israel in the covenant, so that he can fulfill his will and teach and guide us by means of his ways in order for us to choose to genuinely and continually travel in his manner. I'm working right now on chapter, I guess it's 12 of observations, and pursuing a particular idea with what does the branch represent. And so it's taking me through a number of texts. Ultimately, I'll end up in Zechariah. But right now I'm in Shamuel, what's called now the second book, although there was only one book originally of Shamuel. Mm-hmm. And dealing with the passages around 7:11, where Yahweh has the prophecy about the descendant of Dod. But right before that statement, he says, speaking of Dod, and I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. And the reason I bring that up is that when we talk about Yahweh fulfill his will, Yahweh wants to enjoy being a father. That's what he wants to enjoy. Being a father I think is the most marvelous thing a person can ever experience. And Yahweh wants to be a father. I think we can become much more relaxed and comfortable around Yahweh when we recognize that the covenant is not all about him making us perfect and immortal, adopting us into his family, enriching and empowering us. The benefits of the covenant are not one way. That Yahweh gets as much out of the covenant as we do.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's any father who has ever given something to his son or daughter that thinks somehow that they gave more than they got back in return. Ever. The joy of providing for, of walking with, of talking with, of teaching and guiding and empowering and uplifting a child is every bit as rewarding on the parent as it is on the child. And so I think we are, at least I am, I don't want to speak for everyone. There's a lot of people I think that do want to, because of the magnitude of difference between our power and intellect and qualities, want to have Yahweh up on a pedestal. And maybe I'm even inferring that when I speak of myself as a dull and dented and dirty implement. But
just for now.
Yeah.
It's going to move you up.
But ultimately, I don't. One of the reasons I'm really uncomfortable with anything that even smacks of worshiping Yahweh is that in a father-child relationship, I recognize that he gets a lot out of it. Even when I blather and when I'm when I stumble, and when I figure out the simplest things, I think he gets a lot out of it. And isn't it more? Aren't you more comfortable in a relationship with somebody that you sense is enjoying the relationship as much as you are?
Of course.
You're not always trying to prove yourself or your merit or are worried about, are they going to continue to care about me, if you know that they're getting as much out of it as you are. You can relax in it. And I think that's what Yahweh was saying, that his will to teach and guide us will be on display at that time. Then it says, for indeed, because from Zion. So now all of this is happening from Zion. The family home being established, us returning, Yahweh returning. The summit of the ultimate ridge line in Jerusalem. Zion.
Earth Central.
Right. That from Zion, the conspicuous signs posted to mark the way shall be brought forth. Paul's letters. The Christian New Testament.
Of course they would be.
The Catholic canon. The Quran. The Talmud. No, it doesn't say any of that, does it? What's going to be
no, it's
always
the Torah. It's always.
So what does Zion point to?
Zion points to the family home and the Torah and the Yahweh is the Torah. His word.
Yeah, points to Yahweh, points to the family home, points to the Torah, which is, by the way, the only place you're going to find Yahweh and the family home. You know, I was dealing with that prophecy in 2 Samuel 7:11, and one of the things that was interesting is it was talking about also this family home, and it says that, you know, he's going to establish the family home, and throughout that prophecy, as you probably know, there are places where it's clearly speaking of Yosha, there's places where it's clearly speaking of Dod, there's places where it's speaking of both of them, places where you just cannot take the words literally. Because when it talks about building the family home, that saying that he shall do that for my name. Did Dod build the first temple?
No.
No, he did not, did he?
No, Solomon.
Did Yosha build the second temple?
No.
No. Does this passage say that Yosha is going to build the third temple? In fact, does it even call it a temple?
I don't think so. It would be maybe home.
The answer is no, no, and no. It uses bayat. It means home. So, since Yosha didn't lift a stone for the home of Yahweh, and since Dod placed, which was the cornerstone, and left the rest to his son Solomon, because he was precluded from building it by Yahweh because he was a man of war. You cannot read it literally as to say that he's going to build the temple. Neither one did. So what did they build that would apply to both of them? What did they establish for Yahweh's name? Both of them.
Well, the relationship.
The covenant.
Oh, the covenant.
Be'ereth, which is the Be'eth. The Be'eth, family home, is the Be'ereth, covenant family. Dod made a stunningly important contribution to it because he revealed what Yahweh is looking for, and it isn't good behavior.
No.
It isn't charity.
Not at all.
It's a willingness to carefully observe, to closely examine.
That would go back to your point, by the way, of Tob, because once again, we're talking about what Yahweh wants from us. He can take care of all the rest, by the way, as you know.
Correct.
So, but he's telling you right there again, Tob, what the definition of Tob is. For his view, it's following the path. So the things that you can do and not screw up.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. One of the problems I had with defining Tob was that twice Yahweh refers to not Shemuel, but Shaul, King Shaul, as Tob. But from man's perspective, and that's what he was speaking of.
The way they do it, yes.
Yeah.
And they did. They thought it was great.
He was Tob. He was perfectly fitting. He was tall. He was rich. He was articulate. He was handsome. He was a fierce fighter.
All of the above,
All of the above.
Oh,
so
tough.
from
leader.
Right, tough. Yeah, he was a human leader among humans. He was taller, more vicious, more overhauled.
Man.
Handsome. He was the kind of person that would win a presidential debate and election and could beat the commander-in-chief and get people to follow him. He was fit for that job. It's just that it's a job that Yahweh doesn't want done. But he was fit for it. And so, I think it even works for the king, who was the model for the wannabe apostle, who was also seen as fit by men, but not by God.
Yeah.
So we have Zion pointing the way to the Torah, to the source from which teaching, guidance, direction, and instruction flow. The word of Yahweh from Jerusalem, not from the church, not from politics.
Well, this is devastating if a Christian reads it. It would have devastated. It wouldn't. Yeah. You would have to. Well, where could you go with it? You couldn't go anywhere with this.
Right.
But to the Torah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am convinced, by the way, and I should finish that thought, that Dode played an enormous role in building the family home of Yahweh. One way was by his very nature, his focus on observing the Torah and then sharing the insights he gleaned from it by way of his writings. And that his mizmor, his songs on the Torah, tell us how to observe the Torah so that we can become part of Yahweh's family. And Yosha opened the door to Yahweh's family home. He was the living embodiment of the Torah and the covenant. And so I think that both can be credited with building a family home for Yahweh's name. And so
Can I mention one little thing, though, also about Dode that you hit before, of course, but in the modern vernacular, there's a lot of Christians who get their guidance from the Spirit. The Holy Spirit will guide me, so I don't need to know all this stuff. Dode is the closest thing to number one son, Yosha, that Yahweh has, right? It's his favorite. No question. And nobody disagrees with that, even the Christians don't disagree with that.
Right.
Where did he get his information? He only had one source.
Correct.
Spiritual guide said to him, I'm speaking to you from my heart and I'm talking in tongues.
Yeah. No, the only prophet was a contemporary of his.
Samuel.
Yeah, Samuel.
But his conclusions were drawn from his study of the Torah, just like yours.
100%.
Just like mine.
That's what. So we learned from. He learned from the same source. He just was smarter and more articulate. And I think also, to be fair, there's a difference between what you and I write. What we do is we translate what Yahweh said to the greatest of our ability, and then we comment on what we learned from it. There's a difference between that and actually writing Yahweh's testimony. I mean, we're translating Yahweh's testimony and commenting on it. Dode was writing Yahweh's testimony. So there is a significant difference in that regard. But once you read what Dode was inspired to write, that difference is insignificant. Then we know what Dode. Once we read what Yahweh said,
is still the Torah.
Why don't you tell me what the difference is between what Yahshua knew that he was inspired to say based upon Yahweh's testimony through him, and what we know when we read what Yahweh revealed through Yahshua? What is the difference?
Other than he heard it first, it's the same thing. We got the same message.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I would have to say that our chances of understanding it are significantly greater than his, because we have
our perspective looking back.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah.
Perspective.
And all the other things implied too. Yeah.
But there is no reason to suspect that Dode or Yahshua or Yirmiyah knew anything beyond what we can know by reading what Yahweh revealed through them. I don't think there's any reason to suspect that Moshe had any insights into the Torah that he did not share.
No, I don't think there's Any mysteries left behind somewhere? No.
Right. You know, I was always wondering why Debadim exists, because Debadim is Moshe speaking about his perspective on the Torah and the insights he gleaned from the Torah, what he thinks should be prioritized in the Torah, and how to properly observe the Torah, and how to respond to Yahweh and his invitations and the statements that he etched in stone. But isn't that the whole purpose of the Torah?
Well, of course it is.
Isn't Moshe demonstrating what we ought to be doing? What God wants us all to do?
Yeah. Now, we have to work a little harder because it's not our native tongue, but we just have to dig it out a little harder. But once we get it, you get it. The concept.
You know, and I'm not even sure if that is a liability.
No, I don't think it is.
You're right. You're right. If Yahweh were to rattle off instructions in Hebrew to me, the likelihood of being able to be an effective scribe on his behalf and to write it all down and with the proper grammar is nil. Yeah. Proper spelling, proper grammar is nil. But the advantage we have over Moshe is as Moshe was hearing this and he was writing it down, and I'm sure he saw the juxtaposition between what the letters conveyed and what Yahweh had to say, and he had the advantage of Yahweh's inflection as he said it. It's all going by very quickly. You know, this is he spent 70 days there, and then he lived it for the 40 years. But we have the opportunity to study every single word under a microscope, to consider every conjugation, every stem, every mood, every aspect of every word and its root and what it means. In a way, we have an advantage. And the other thing we can do is that it's one thing for Moshe to have been given this great fire hose of information. But then we have all of the Mizmor and the prophets,
which he did
helping us to understand the
from a different
implications of
angle.
all of
That's
these
what
things.
good teaching is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
We have those insights as to what this means. I think we have an advantage.
Yeah.
I don't think we're handicapped.
Yeah.
You know, Yehudim Yisraelites many are native speakers of Hebrew.
Well,
what percentage of them understand what Yahweh said in the Torah? Certainly not an advantage for them, is it?
It apparently has not been, no. There's a lot of twisted stuff in that stuff, though.
Yeah, there certainly is.
And they change the language, change the words, change the pronunciation. That makes it tough.
So, for indeed, because from Zion, the conspicuous signs most posted to mark the way, shall be brought forth the Torah, the source from which teaching, guidance, direction, and instruction flow. The word of Yahweh. So the Torah is the word of Yahweh from where?
From Jerusalem. Huh?
Then he shall execute good judgment, being discerning by making appropriate connections regarding the Goyim, the Gentiles. And he shall reasonably conclude that the enriched and empowered people who are part of the family are right, deciding to vindicate them once and for all. Then they shall beat their weapons for plows, and their spears for pruning hooks. And Gentile nations shall not rise up towards Gentile nations, deploying weapons of war. They will no longer train or teach conflict ever again. So when the Trumpster said, you know, we need God's wisdom to know how to fight.
You should read this.
Terrorism. Yeah, maybe you should read this. What is God's wisdom?
God's in the farming, he ain't in the killing.
Right. Turn your weapons of war into farming implements. That's what he says. Every tank, every fighter, every warship, every bomb, every gun, every bullet. Transform them into something useful. Plows and pruning hooks. Isn't that amazing? God, why do you have to have God's wisdom? Why do you have to want to know what God thinks when he tells you? Stop deploying weapons.
You got to read it.
Stop engaging in war. Stop engaging in war. Stop building weapons of war. Transform your weapons of war into useful tools to harvest that which is nourishing. Then never fight again. You want to end the conflicts and the death toll to Islamic terrorism? Stop selling them weapons.
Stop giving them weapons. Selling them or otherwise. And stop
fighting them and stop providing them with weapons. Now, is that my opinion?
I think it's right here, isn't it?
Isn't it right here?
Yeah, right in front of our face.
How hard is that to figure out? Well, I came up with the idea that the only useful approach to Islam was to quarantine it, to stop giving and selling them weapons, and to stop fighting them. Looks like I wasn't the first to come up with that idea, was I?
No.
I can't take any credit for that idea. You know, one of the things that's interesting about coming to know Yahweh is that when we accept his perspective as our own, when we attempt to view things as he presents them, you can look at almost anything that's happening in the world and know the right answer, know what we should do. And so I looked at the world of Islam after coming to understand it and said, this is how we ought to treat it. And then I read Yahweh saying the same thing. Well, there's only one reason I came up to that conclusion.
Yeah. And probably the second. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that probably the second smartest man about Islam, like you, agreed with you immediately. He said, that's brilliant.
Yeah. It's the right thing to do. Stop bombing them. Stop killing them.
The only thing you can do.
And stop supplying them with weapons.
Yeah.
You know,
and
we
you certainly don't try to go
to Muslims than anybody else. Stop it. And stop building weapons. Start instead building plows, pruning hooks. Stop rising up against another nation.
So is that all America's got?
Train or teach conflict again. Now, what's interesting, Kirk, is here is Yahweh's returning. We're the Goyim that were part of the covenant have returned. We're all radiant and joyful and celebrating this occasion when Yahweh builds his the family home on the summit of Mount Moriah. And the first thing that God says about the Goyim that still remain is that they're going to stop teaching war. Does that not mean that the most irritating thing that we do now is fight wars?
Of course.
Does that mean that in the millennial Shabbat there will be no weapons and no armies?
There will be no weapons and no armies.
So when Yahweh is here and we get to live with him, and he is saying that the thing that's going to be immediately different is there'll be no weapons and no wars and no fighting, why in the hell do we think that God is somehow aligned with us bombing another nation?
So how do you pray to God to help you win battles? Why are you asking him? Why are you even asking him?
Support our
should I
troops.
do this or not?
Yes.
How stupid can you? What a stupid remark in this country.
God's position on any and every nation's military is the same. They ought not exist. They ought not fight. Shut it down. You know, I took the position that the single smartest thing we can do about the U.S. military and a spying apparatus is to eliminate them. To go from them being larger than the rest of the world's combined to non-existing. And we'd all be safer.
Yeah.
We'd all be freer. The world would be better off if we eliminated it. Not my opinion. That's Yahweh's. Do you think Yahweh's going to make the world more vulnerable by eliminating all weapons of war and making them implements of a harvest? And by having no one fight again? You know, I had a friend that wrote me, he says, would you do a show on righteous wars?
Yeah.
I said, no. Never has.
Well, what's a righteous war?
Yeah. There aren't any.
Yeah, righteous is upright. Tzedek.
Right. There aren't any is the answer. The house of Jacob, or house of Jacob, choose to walk this way. Because then we can genuinely and continuously journey through space and time of our own volition in the light of Yahweh. So now, He has spoken of the Gentiles. He turns his attention immediately to the house of Jacob, which is Yisrael, the chosen people. Choose to walk this way. Non-violent way. Non-militaristic way. Choose to walk this way. Because we can genuinely and continuously journey throughout space and time of our own volition in the light of Yahowah. By the way, when we're transformed into a light, what effect would a bullet have?
It'd be zero. You can't.
Zero.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I know it's a rhetorical question, but yes.
Yeah.
No effect whatsoever.
Correct. Except your people have rejected and abandoned the house and family of Jacob, because they are full of the ways of Eastern antiquity, and of fortune tellers and magicians, and those who practice sorcery by attempting to communicate with dead souls and demonic spirits, like the Philistine, the foreign foes who invade the promised land, invoking fear by terrorizing. And with offsprings of foreigners, they clasp their hands and engage in the business of mockery and ridicule. So he's talking about the house of Jacob, and he says, this is a bad situation.
Yes.
Israel has abandoned
with the wrong folks.
Abandoned the family. And they have instead embraced Eastern antiquity, fortune tellers, magicians, those who practice sorcery. That from his point of view, his chosen people now are more akin to the Philistine. Now, the Philistine were scumbags. They were disgusting. The Philistine only could do one thing well: fight. Is there anything else they did? They didn't have a language.
No.
They didn't have an alphabet. They didn't build any lasting monument or anything worthwhile. They never developed a civilization.
They stole for a living.
Stole for a living. The Philistines are known for only one thing. They were savage fighters. They were savage fighters. And he said, okay, so Israel, you're more like the Philistine than you are anything else. You're a foreign foe. But yet, they are transformed. It says that you clasp hands and engage in the business of mockery and ridicule. When Israel kisses up to the United States because we supply them with the weapons, that's what he's talking about here.
Absolutely, that's it. The USA and
when they make deals with Turkey, when they make deals with other countries, he's saying, you're clasping hands and engaging in the business of mockery and ridicule. The realm is filled with silver and gold. Yeah, Jews are rich.
And
there's no end to the treasures. Probably per capita the richest race in the world. Their land overflows with swift stallions. He's talking about this is war machines. Tanks, for example.
Chariots of war. Tanks, yes.
Right, chariots of war. Yeah, chariots of war. Their land overflows with swift stallions. And there's no limit to their chariots of war. That's war equipment. That's, the per capita, Israel is about the largest military spender in the world. Now, they're outspent 25 to 1 by the Islamic nations surrounding them. 25 to 1.
Yeah,
but per capita, not per capita. Yeah, per capita, there's relatively no limit to their chariots of war. Their land is overwhelmed with religious images and false gods. Boy, is that ever true. Look at Israel. That's why I would never go back. Until Yahweh cleans up the place, I am going back there. The work of their hands. They convey their intent by bowing down in homage and allegiance to what they have made with their fingers. You ever seen the pictures of, and I've actually watched them doing it, the minions of rabbinical black hat fundamentalist Jews bowing down and putting their little notes in the western wall, as they recite rabbinic prayers. It's mind-numbing what they have done. It's just mind-numbing. The realm is filled with silver and gold. Yeah. No ends to their chariot of war. Their land is overwhelmed with religion, image, and false gods, the work of their hands. They convey their intent by bowing down in homage and allegiance to that what they have made with their fingers. So humankind bows down in submission and fear. Each and almost every individual is humiliated and humbled. Boy, that's the nature of religion and politics. Militaries. So do not accept them. Do not support them. Do not endure them. Do not respect them.
No.
You know, I received a letter from a man that I really respect, I dearly love, and he was adamant that I owe somebody an apology because I did not respect what they had written about the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not support them. I invested probably 10 hours in trying to help them initially, and then I got a really despicable letter from them. And I decided that based upon Yahweh's approach to such things, that I ought not respect them. I ought not endure them. I ought not support them.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, this person now has been introduced to more of Yada Yah by a really accommodating and loving covenant member. He's an extraordinary man, a man I dearly love and respect.
Yes.
And that is critical of my response to him. I think I did what this says.
Yes, you did. I was there. Heard every word.
So whether or not that's the right thing to do, that is Yahweh's approach to such things, and I know it's not the Christian approach. But Yahweh's not much tolerant. Now,
Yosha did that constantly. Didn't mean you couldn't turn around and approach him again. You have free will, but that's not.
You got free will. You know,
he met you where you were, not where you might be.
You know, and we've all made mistakes. We've all said things we ought not have said. I was an evangelical Christian. I was a right-wing Republican, patriotic, flag-waving American. I saluted the military. I mean, I was bad news, but I stopped it. I feel badly about those things. I've invested thousands of hours trying to correct my mistake. I admitted that I was wrong, learned from being wrong, and have sought to expose and condemn what I said that was wrong. That's a transition we can make, and Yahweh is once we stop and we accept Yahweh's testimony, he no longer holds what we have done that is wrong against us, but we need to admit that what we said and did was wrong. I don't think we have to admit it. What we have to do is personally acknowledge that our approach, our religious and political approach, is inconsistent with Yahweh's testimony, and then reject it so that we can accept his terms and conditions for participating in the covenant. And when we do that, Yahweh does not hold it against us. Now,
I was extremely lucky in that when I read Yada Yah the first time, I must have been totally ready to walk away because it just didn't take me very long. But I understand people drag a lot. It takes them a long time to get out of Babylon. But so
there were parts of it that I was ready
but that doesn't mean you have to make it easy for him. Just say, look, this is the deal. That's what he said. He never, and then what you said one time struck me, and I've never forgotten it, is Yahweh didn't meet Abraham until he was already out. He didn't call Moshe until he was already out. He can't find you there. He won't talk to you there.
Correct.
So
both of them were out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had left Babylon.
So you got to throw all that trash away and get out. I mean, you have to know everything. You just got to know this.
Right.
That's not the path. Get on the path, and then it becomes easy.
Yeah. Yeah. He had rejected Babylon, and one had rejected Mitzrayim.
Yeah, but
Yahweh met with them.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they completed the rest of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Yahweh was talking about Acharon, the last days, and thus. I believe that his focus here is what's going to happen during the 5 days between Yom Kippurim, when he'll return and establish his house, and Sukkah, when he will camp out, beginning his camp out with us in Jerusalem for 1,000 years. So he's talking about Yom Kippurim and Sukkah, circa 6,000 Yah. Now that correlates the best I can determine to commencing at sunset in Jerusalem on Monday, October 2nd, around 6:20 p.m., and concluding before sundown on Friday evening, October 7th in 2033, on the Roman Catholic calendar in use today. Now, I've always been honest about this, and I want to be completely honest about this. I am certain that Yahweh will return on Yom Kippurim at 6,000 Yah. I am certain that the millennial Shabbat will begin on Sukkah in year 6,000 Yah. But the correlation between Yahweh's calendar and the Roman pagan calendar of Imperial Rome has challenges associated with it. But when we apply the prophecy that is contained in Daniel about the timing of his arrival, and when the countdown begins at 444 BCE, and we apply the math to that date, we come to 4 days before Pesach in 33 BCE and CE. We come to 4 days before Pesach in 33 CE. And when we look at the eyewitness account of what transpired, and we know that he celebrated Pesach both that evening and the following day as the sacrificial lamb, and that he arrived in Jerusalem 4 days before Pesach is when the lamb is supposed to arrive in the home. And we look at what transpired on the natural Shabbat of Matzah, and then what transpired on the first day of the week to celebrate first fruits and firstborn children. The likelihood of it being 33 CE is overwhelmingly high. But
are you not firm that 33 CE was the Yobel? I mean, if we had that, and you have 40 Yobel
I think that, listen, I know that your 4,000 Yah, I know that your 4,000 Yah is when Yosha fulfilled these promises.
Okay. Fair enough.
I know that for certain. I've done hundreds of hours of research on Yahweh's testimony and come to the conclusion that the only year that makes sense based upon particularly Daniel's prophecies and the moon phases for that period of time is 33 CE. But Yahweh does not use the Imperial Roman Catholic calendar. So any attempt to transition from his time to man's time has some issues that is fraught with peril. And so I don't want to claim that my transition from one to the other is somehow perfect or inspired. It isn't.
No, but I would have a hard time arguing against you when you talk about Yobels, and there's enough Yobels where we know that's the Yobel year, where it is, where you can do the numbers. And what other Yobel could be even close to what we're experiencing right now, and all the prophecies are talking about these experiences right now. It's pretty cut and dry to me, and I know you want to pick all the things out.
The blood moon both on Pesach and on Sukkah in 2033.
It's overwhelming. I mean,
or that Rabbi Akiba foisted the false Messiah on Yisrael in what he knew was a Yobel year, as close as he could calculate, because they're off by 100 years or so, to 4,000 Yah when he foisted Bar Kokhba on Yisrael and invited the Roman destruction that followed. I think there's overwhelming evidence, but I am flawed, and so I can just tell you it's going to happen in year 6,000 Yah for certain, which based upon my analysis, the best I can do, I have determined is October 2nd for Sukkah at sundown on October 7th, which is a Friday evening, the beginning of a Shabbat on the in that year, which is just, again, perfect.
See, I'm more surprised that how we can even get that far.
Yeah, I know.
Wow, I'm still a long time for all these monkeys.
Yeah, particularly the Russian, the most recent announcement from Russia on what they say is the consequence of us doing what we did in Syria. And the Russians do know that Assad, as bad as he is better, vastly better than what will replace him. And he knows that what we did was counterproductive.
Yeah.
So that is when Yahweh, after incinerating all of man's religious rubbish, will establish his earthly home for his family on the summit of his favorite place. And while that is Moriah, to revere Yah, it is not the Temple Mount. It is neither the summit of Mount Moriah nor the place where Yahweh initiated the covenant. So Zion, the signs posted along the way, therefore depicts, in my view, all 4 points, all 4 events which have taken place on Mount Moriah over the course of 80 Yobel, 4,000 years. The story begins with the arrival of Abraham and Yishak to Moriah at Yahweh's request. Like Noah before him, Abraham listened to God and followed his directions. The result of accepting and acting upon Yah's guidance was to confirm the Bereth covenant in year 2000 Yah, 1968 BCE. So while the mountain was correctly identified as Moriah, revere Yah, the meeting which foreshadowed Pesach, Passover, on this day, in this place, and for this reason, serves as one of the most important signs posted along the way. It affirmed the correlation between the covenant, God's directions, the benefits Yahweh would provide by way of his mikre, his invitations to meet. And like the example of Noah, it puts us on notice that we need not only listen to God, but also act, doing what he has requested. We need to respond. The next step along this journey includes the establishment of the kingdom of Dod on the same mountain, culminating with his son Solomon building Yahweh's home in year 3000 Yah, 968 BCE. According to God, the kingdom of Dod will be reestablished upon his return. So it is especially relevant to this story. Yah's home and the home of his beloved son. They share a common view and similar address, seeing that both are set upon the ridgeline of the same mountain. Continuing to survey the 4 most important events depicted by Zion. Indeed, the 4 most, I would say, important events in all of human history. They occurred exactly 1,000 years after the cornerstone of Yahweh's home was set into place. Yosha, in the set-apart spirit, honored the promise Yahweh had made regarding Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim, and Shabuah, fulfilling the mikre on Moriah, all in year 4000 Yah, which I've concluded is 33 CE, thereby enabling the benefits of the covenant. If one considers, as I do, the upright pillar upon which the Passover Lamb of God was affixed, a sign which has been posted, then these events serve as the ultimate Zion. Golgotha, the site of Pesach's fulfillment, is located directly above Jeremiah's grotto, where the Ark of the Covenant, directly below the summit of Mount Moriah, where Yosha's body was taken at the conclusion of Pesach. Now finally, in year 6000 Yah, which I think is 2033 CE, God will do just as he has foretold in Yahshua and return to this place. Just as Yahshua predicted, erecting his home, he will personally prove that Moriah is where the signs posted along the way have been provided to direct us to the Torah, to the word of Yahweh. Now, that being the case, there are some very interesting measurements that I would like us to consider.
Okay.
Kirk, do you think that Yahweh measures things in miles?
No, sir.
No, it's a British system of measurement, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How about kilometers?
Not at all.
Not at all. If you read the testimony of Yahweh, you would conclude that the unit of measure was strictly that of the tip of the finger to the elbow.
Yes.
Because he speaks of that. Yeah, he speaks of that as his measurement. The ark was measured, for example, with height, length, and measurements that go from the elbow to the tip of the finger. And I think that's appropriate because that is the part
done by
of the
hand,
anatomy.
hands work. All that stuff,
Right,
yeah.
that we do work, that we act, that we engage, that we can reach up to Yah, and we can respond to what he has asked, or we can build idols and wield weapons of war.
Right.
It's the measure. It is the measure of man. But my conclusion is that there is a measure associated with man that is far more important to Yahweh. And that's why he uses halak so consistently to describe what he expects of us. And my view is that that is the stride.
It is most appropriate. What you're about to say is most appropriate. Yeah.
Right, the stride. And
the stride.
if you were to quantify a stride in measurements that we're familiar with today, how long is it?
It's a walking step, maybe a yard, like they play some off a football game.
A yard or a meter. A meter and a yard essentially are very close to the same. When I play golf and you play golf, and I want to measure distance in yards, I take strides. I take strides, and one stride equals 1 yard. So isn't it interesting that the outcropping of Mount Moriah rises 970 feet above the sea, which is where Dod's house is, which is 600 meters, equivalent to 600 strides. That is where the man that Yahweh loved built his home, 600 meters, 600 strides above the sea.
Yeah.
That's telling because 6 is the number of man who was conceived on the 6th day. That's why Dod's house is built there. Now, the actual summit of Mount Moriah, where Yahweh will build his home, reaches 2,549 feet above mean sea level, which is 777 meters, the equivalent of 777 human strides.
It's pretty staggering.
Yep, his purpose. Now, we're going to be cut off in terms of broadcast here in a moment.
Yeah.
Maybe we already have. But let's go ahead and continue this because it will be part of the
broadcast.
Yeah. So the actual summit of Moriah is 777 strides above the sea. And, of course, the sea represents Gentiles, and Mount Moriah represents a relationship with Yahweh. It's 777 strides above the sea. Powerful, isn't it? The summit of Mount Moriah is found directly above. Yep, it's just amazing. The summit of, and particularly when you think of, okay, what measure is Yahweh going to use in terms of the relationship? The relationship is always about us walking.
Walking to him.
The 2 letters that are repeated in Yahweh's name, what do they show?
They have 2 people walking. What you described at the very start of this, though, you started with the hand, the arm,
right.
And then you went to the feet. And when you put those together, of course, you have 8. So, I mean, it's
right. And you've got both of them. And the 2 people who are standing, are their feet not a full...
They're separated. They're all walking.
A full stride apart.
That's right.
A full stride apart.
I mean, they're upright, but they're not. They are in movement. They're in action.
Right. A full stride apart their feet are. Wider than the shoulders. A full stride apart.
Yeah.
And so the forearm to the tip of the finger is depicted. And the first letter in Yahweh's name and the letter that's repeated is 2 people whose feet are a full stride apart.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that the summit of Mount Moriah is found directly above the Golgotha embankment, which served as a backdrop for Pesach. This location is exactly 777 paces, therefore 777 meters, northwest of where the second temple was located by way of the Damascus Gate. It's not just 777 strides above the sea. It's exactly 777 steps away from where the temple, second temple, was located through the Damascus Gate. I mean,
you can't. Well, I know you love to do these things when you calculate. What are the odds? You know,
what are the odds?
There's a Yahweh.
He's good. He designed the terrain of Jerusalem to affirm his formula,
everything.
his message.
What a signpost.
Yeah.
What a signpost.
These are the signs. There's elevation and distance, right? That's what we put on signs.
Mm-hmm.
As for, and direction.
Yeah.
As for the Temple Mount, it sits in the middle of the ridge, situated directly between the city of Dode, below it, and the summit of Mount Moriah, 40 meters.
Not a significant number.
With the foundation of the temple established at 24 feet, which is 737 strides or meters above the sea. 40 is the number of completion in Hebrew, and there are 3 locations associated with this ultimate embodiment of 7 in this place. Therefore, 737 strides.
37.
And as affirmation of 40, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights in the flood after spending 400 years as slaves in Egypt. The Exodus lasted for 40 years. And Yosha devoted 40 days to sharing his Torah with Moshe. Just examples of this. So as for the Temple Mount, it sits in the midst of the ridge situated between the city of David and the summit of Mount Moriah, and it is exactly 40 meters above it. It is thought-provoking to be sure that the home of the man Yahweh loved most of all, Dode, is 600 human strides above the sea. And that 6 is the number of man created the 6th day, a carbon-based life form with an atomic number of 6, whose stride is 1 meter in length, likewise. And that a meter is equivalent to the distance we cover with each step we walk with Yahweh, the actual summit of Mount Moriah, where Abraham and Yahweh met to affirm the covenant is 777 strides above the sea. Yeah. I'm repeating myself, but so does Yah.
Yeah, but it bears repeating.
Yep. Equally intriguing, from the original location of the Ark of the Covenant in the second temple to its present location beneath the summit of Moriah, and thus directly below the Golgotha escarpment, is 2,353 feet, or 777 strides. The summit area remains uninhabited and undisturbed. There are no shrines, monuments, or other forms of human clutter on Moriah's rounded peak. Building site in the most coveted city in the world, as it was during the time of Abraham, just 17 years shy of 4,000 years ago.
Now that, my friend, is staggering.
It's just...
I've said it before, but I mean, every time you read it, that is staggering.
Yeah, it's staggering.
And Jake was kind enough to get all the pictures for us and send them to a bunch of us, and it was like, wow, it really is.
Wow.
There it is.
Yeah, I saw that picture of the summit of Moriah, and I was spellbound. And it's just like...
Yeah. Unblemished.
Unblemished.
Perfect.
And every time I see a picture of Jerusalem and I see that hideous shrine to Satan, the Dome of the Rock, I recognize that Yahweh is going to destroy it as he approaches earth. That fault line is going to run from the Mount of Olives all the way to the sea, and it's going to well up as it envelops everything between Olives and the sea, running from east to west, and then filled with cleansing waters, is going to envelop it all. It's all going to go away, be swallowed into the earth.
And symbolically, I mean, realistically and symbolically, with watching.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, equally, I think, is interestingly presented. The highest summit in Jerusalem is actually the Mount of Olives, which is due east of the Temple Mount across the Kidron Valley. Olives is comprised of 3 hills, the highest of which is 2,639 feet above sea level. How many strides that is, Kirk?
I do. Go ahead.
8,000. Excuse me, 800. 800 strides. No, it's 2,639 feet. By the way,
significant 8.
We all occasionally have slips between mind and look, I'm reading 800. I'm thinking 800. I said 8,000. I am indeed flawed. I goof. 800 is the see, I told you needed to answer the question. 2,639 feet above sea level is 800 strides. 8 is relevant, isn't it, as it relates to the spirit, which is which is related to olives.
And everybody knows it.
Is a symbol of the spirit. The spirit is the symbol of eternity and of light, which is synonymous with eternity. And 8 is Yahweh's number for eternity. It's 800 strides. It's 800 strides.
And you don't think you'll have fun with this guy? Are you kidding?
How could you not have fun with him? And now there's a hotel and a church on the highest point of Olives and a menagerie of graves along the western face. But it matters not, because Olives is the mountain that will be severed upon Yahweh's return. An earthquake fault will separate it into 2, running east to west through it. The resulting fissure will destroy the Temple Mount, and along with it the shrines to Satan that have been erected upon it. Also the church of the Holy Sepulchre will be swallowed by the earth. And through this new valley, living waters will flow east to west, cascading into the Mediterranean Sea, Israel's primary seaport, giving life to the Dead Sea on the east, and cascading from Olives all the way to the sea on the west. I suspect that Yahweh will build a bridge of light over this river, Dod's home with his home. I think that has been God's intent from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, that's a great metaphor, and of course, it absolutely.
Now, Kirk, I'm convinced that the summit that is called Mount Zion today, which lies on an equal distance to the west across the Central Valley, is not Mount Zion. It claims an elevation of 2,510 feet and is actually the largest, not the tallest mountain in Jerusalem. However, it is what is referred to as Mount Zion is not the Zion of which Yahweh speaks. You see, during the second half of the First Temple period, Jerusalem expanded westward, and its defensive walls were extended to include the entire western hill, now called Zion. But the lines of demarcation were blurred when Nebuchadnezzar II, who completely destroyed the city in 586 BCE, obliterating historical landmarks while significantly impairing the people's memory of them, especially following their long detention in Babylon. After successive periods of rebuilding, Jerusalem was destroyed a second and third time by the Romans, first in 70 CE and again in 133. And the people who forgot their God also forgot what he had said. The Jewish religious traitor turned Roman historian Josephus never used the term Zion, but wrongly wrote that the citadel of King David, was situated on the higher and longer hill. This implied that the western hill was the location of the city of David, which is called Zion today. The fact that it is a more prominent location than the ridgeline below the Temple Mount caused the myth to be perpetuated through the long chasms of time. This misconception continued under Christian, Byzantine, Muslim, Ottoman, British, and Jordanian rule over Jerusalem, with the latter forbidding Jews from visiting any of the sites made famous by the Torah, the Nabi, or the Mizmor, between 1948 and 1967. Man has a long history of being wrong. But Yahweh was really clear, and our next week's program will get into great detail about this, because he said specifically that Zion was coterminous with the city of Dod. And we have found the city of Dod.
Yes.
Dod's home, his city, has been unearthed. It is on the lowest part of the ridgeline of Mount Moriah. We know where it is. We know what God said about it. Man has been wrong for a very long time.
Yeah. Is man ever right about anything?
No, we're not right about it. You know, what is, again, how is raw, which is the term that is typically translated evil, how is raw depicted in Hebrew?
Dysfunctional. Yes.
Yeah, man's view. Extremely functional. You want to be incapacitated, you want to be...
Yeah, follow man's view.
Yeah, be wrong, follow man's view, be raw. The literal presentation of raw is man's view. The head of man, and then an eyeball. And the head of man looking at the eyeball.
Yeah.
Man's view. You can't mistake it.
The worst perspective you can have.
Right. Man's religious, political, military.
They invented them all.
Yeah, academic.
Didn't them write the story right out there? I mean, it was, so
sure.
Why are you doing that?
Right.
God never came up with a religion. They didn't even come up with a word for it.
Exactly. In fact, what he calls wrong is man's view, man's perspective, the religious, the political, the societal perspective. So it's pretty straightforward. That's not what we ought to be doing. So anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed the research on Zion, and we'll get into more of what Yahweh said about Zion. Not because we need at this point to prove that it was that Zion was coterminous with the house of Dod, the home of Dod.
No, but it's fascinating stuff, and
yes,
it deserves talking about even more. I mean, so. Boy, how many hours did it take you to put all this together?
You know, I'm a slow writer.
Well, you may be a slow writer.
I am a really slow writer. And you know something? There's some things that are hard. For example, do you know that Google Maps, Google Earth, grays out the most important sites in Jerusalem?
Really?
Really? Oh,
are you kidding me?
What
are they so afraid of, y'all?
So that so you can't, the level of detail when you zoom in other places, you can't do that in Jerusalem. It just goes blurry.
Is there some type of
and you know that if you look for a topographical map of Jerusalem, they're almost impossible to find, and what few you can find, you can't blow up to the point that you can even read them. You know how hard it is to get elevations in these places and distances in these places? Yeah, it was not easy. Yeah, it was not easy.
Wow.
And of course, my inclination has always been that that Zion means how it's defined by Yahweh, signs posted along the way. But I had always thought that Yahweh marked Jerusalem with three mountains: Olives, Moriah, and Zion.
Yes, I don't know where you started with that, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the case. Zion is coterminous with Mount Moriah. So there are two mountains, Olives and Moriah. And Zion is on Moriah. Therefore, you could call it Mount Zion if you want to.
Yeah.
Which is Mount Moriah. In fact, you could, I think, successfully, if you were to say Mount Zion, it would be the summit of Mount Moriah. They'd be coterminous.
That makes sense. I'm taking little notes here, okay?
Yeah, well, anyway, that's my thought on it. We'll hopefully Scott will be able to do the program with us on observations next week. The reason we didn't do it today was just that Scott had other things he needed to do. So hopefully we'll pick up on that, and we'll be able to make more progress through your analysis of not only the Exodus, but
I want your point of view on some things. I did discover something about Egypt, that Egypt relationship with Israel that kind of I don't think I ever noticed before, and I'll save it for you because it may not be that significant, but it certainly some things blew me away.
Yeah, one of the things, like for example, I did a 27-page analysis of the United States interworkings with the Afghani Mujahideen, the Pakistani Taliban, and Al-Qaeda, and then with their presentation of Zakawi. And I was just blown away by what I learned. And sometimes these were things I had not considered before. For example, I always thought that Osama bin Laden was asked to partner through the U.S. with the Pakistani Taliban to wage war against the Russian-backed government in Afghanistan. That's not actually correct. Ronald Reagan had the Afghani Mujahideen to the White House during his term. You can see all of them in the White House, the Oval Office. It's really a stunningly nasty picture. And America, for the most part, tried to use the Afghani Mujahideen, which were wholly distinct from, in fact, adversarial to the Pakistani Taliban.
Sure.
That we did pay the Pakistanis to rent their Taliban, but the primary reason that we paid the Pakistanis was so that we could arm the Afghani Mujahideen, and that Osama bin Laden was not friendly with the Pakistani Taliban, but was very close to and allied with the Afghani Mujahideen, which was our primary tool because, well, they were free, and the Taliban we had to rent from the Pakistanis. And so I learned a lot, and I also learned that what the conditions were and how much more favorable the Russian-backed secular government was than any of the governments that have come since it. And that the first government that replaced it was the one that America sponsored, the Afghani Mujahideen, and they were the most ruthless, the most despised. And that the Taliban was ushered in by the people when they finally beat the Afghani Mujahideen, and the Pakistani Taliban continued to fight after the Soviets left. The Soviets, by the way, were not defeated, as Osama bin Laden claims. They were not defeated in Afghanistan. Gorbachev just said, I got too many issues, and the distraction of Afghanistan is not worth it anymore. And so Gorbachev simply left. They were not defeated by Al-Qaeda or the Afghani Mujahideen, but when they left, the vacuum was filled by the Afghani Mujahideen. They were the most ruthless. They were the ones that met with Ronald Reagan, and it was the Taliban, of course, that Clinton and Bush met with, because the Taliban defeated the Afghani Mujahideen, and they were hugely superior to the Afghani Mujahideen, and that the worst government of all happens to be the American-backed government now. But didn't know some of that history. That is really interesting history. It wasn't the Taliban that actually invited Osama bin Laden out of the Sudan into Afghanistan. No, it wasn't the Taliban. It wasn't the Taliban that decided to harbor him. That's also an American myth. He was invited in and flown in during the time the Afghani Mujahideen were in power, and he came to reside with the Afghani Mujahideen. And then in opposition to the Taliban, whom they were fighting, and when the Taliban defeated the Afghani Mujahideen, Osama bin Laden either had to leave Afghanistan or switch allegiances, which is what he did. But he was never invited in. So our whole premise for that war is ridiculous and was counterproductive. And then I learned that, we all know that Colin Powell lied when he said that the Saddam Hussein regime possessed weapons of mass destruction. But did you know that the lie that he began with was Zakawi?
I know now.
And he equated Zakawi to Al-Qaeda, and said said that he was engaged in terrorism. Zarqawi wasn't even in Iraq at the time. He was in Iran.
Yeah.
And he had no association with al-Qaeda. And that I learned that Bush, through Colin Powell, deliberately lied about the presence of, the importance of, and the associations of Zarqawi to justify the war. And that everything
you pointed out many times prior to that, there was no terrorist activity.
No, there wasn't.
To begin with, until Saddam was overthrown.
If he had been in Iraq, Saddam would have killed him. Rather than harboring him, if he had been in Iraq, Saddam would have hunted him down and killed him. He did not tolerate Islamic fundamentalists.
Mm-hmm.
So the American position was an outright lie. And then I found that the U.S. military actually acknowledged that the whole Zarqawi myth was a psyop, was a deliberate lie perpetrated by the U.S. military to justify and prolong the war, to create the false impression that al-Qaeda was their enemy in Iraq and that we were fighting al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was a deliberate psyop. I mean, stunningly revolting. And what's amazing is that even after Rumsfeld said, yeah, okay, so Zarqawi was never actually a lieutenant of al-Qaeda, had no relationship with al-Qaeda, we have misrepresented his importance. I mean, Rumsfeld admitted it all. And he was the only one to do so. Even after that, the vast preponderance of websites devoted to explaining what happened here still has Zarqawi as important as al-Qaeda, as doing all this terrible stuff in Iraq. He was nobody.
Nothing.
He had no leadership qualities.
Pointed that out. It was very obvious he had nothing.
He had nothing.
He was Superman to somebody in a myth, but not any
He was a myth. He was a myth played by the U.S. military and administration to justify their invasion of occupation. Yeah. And then the other thing is that there's absolutely no relationship between Zarqawi and al-Qaeda and the formation of the Islamic State in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
The Islamic State in Iraq, by their own admission, was formed as an alliance.
Osama just didn't want to. He wanted to kill infidels.
Correct.
Everything was about killing infidels. It wasn't, from the time that we landed anybody on Saudi Arabian soil, it was killed infidel, killed infidel. It was never about killing this Shias.
No. But
he's a pragmatic man.
Zarqawi, it was all about killing Shias.
Killing the bad,
and then the Islamic State was founded completely different than any Islamic terrorist organization, perhaps ever. It was created as a state. It was created as a tribal organization of Iraqis. It was built out of the old American Petraeus Awakening program.
Mm-hmm.
It's just stunning what I learned and the implications of all of it, and how easy it was for the U.S. government to lie and fool the preponderance of people, and continue to keep them fooled. So it was really worth it. If I think it's worth for those, and my guess is it's posted now on the Yahowah Barrett site that James has. I haven't heard from James, but my guess is he's posted it.
Well, I made a copy just in case somebody wanted to read it.
If somebody wants it, they can email you, Kirk. But the reason it has merit to know this is because of Yahowah calling out the United States as the deceptive country that set up the destruction of Israel and empowered the Muslims to do what they've done. And so our invasion of Iraq and giving Iraq to Iran is what established the Islamic State and caused that civil war and caused the conflict in Syria that, as you discovered, WikiLeaks has revealed that the CIA deliberately came up with a 6-point plan, to start the civil war in Syria. And so America created this problem. And that problem is what's going to lead to the thinning of Israel at the waist and to the Magog War. That's why Yahweh holds us accountable. So this history helps to illuminate precisely why Yahweh is so angry at America for the role that it has played in empowering the enemies of Israel and the lies we have perpetrated. So I think it's a worthwhile read. It's 27 pages, a little long.
Absolutely.
And it gets into the issues of...
It takes a while to get through it because if you're not real familiar, and I was familiar with a lot of that because I've heard so much before, and it was kind of like, that's not quite accurate. Now this is what really went down, and that sort of thing. But if you're doing it cold turkey, then you may have to spend a little more time per page till you get your history in order. But that's true of most things. I mean, it was... Let me ask you one quick question before you call it tonight. Everything in this passage we just read is pointing towards the end times and Yehudim, Yisrael, turning to Yah. And as you said, they will in number where they're going to hear the truth. And obviously, it's here. How, with all the things that are going to happen that are so horrific, I'm assuming all this electronic stuff is still going to be around or something. I mean, most everybody in the family thinks that anyway. We've always talked about it one time or another. So there are obviously books out there as well, but it's so horrible what's going to happen, wars and so forth. Where would they get the stuff? I mean, the electronic stuff won't be necessarily available.
Yeah, I know. That's my... I have two concerns. One is because the internet has become ground zero for conspiracies and fake news. It's far worse than mainstream media, which is wrong far more than they're right. And so we're now making this information available in the middle of a sewer. So that is a real concern to me. The internet has become a sewer of human lies and disgusting material. So unfortunately, the only mechanism we have to reach people around the world is a mechanism now that is filled with the worst kind of pollution. And the second is that ultimately the powers that be are going to try to control information. Now, up to this point, when they realized they were going to lose control over access to information,
just muddied the waters.
The elite switched to this concept of political correctness, whereby they would render generations of people incapable of being judgmental. So no matter how much information was made available, people would not know how to process it and discern what is true and what is false. And so the answer to an abundance of information that is available on the internet by the elite is political correctness, to render people incapable of exercising good judgment regarding it. So they don't have to eliminate the source of information. They don't have to shut down Yada Yahweh and introduction to God, because the vast preponderance of people, they have indoctrinated to the point that they're not willing or not able
to challenge anything.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
So they actually don't have to do it. And then the second point of view that I take is that when I was doing Shattering Myths, and I was in the face of the U.S. government and its NSA and CIA on a daily basis, I felt that I was inviting them to target me. And I don't want to be targeted because I'm in opposition to the U.S. government and to patriotism in the U.S. military. If I'm going to be targeted, I want to be targeted because I'm...
Because I said what Yahweh said.
Yeah, because I'm going to say what Yahweh says. They don't care what Yahweh says. So when I return to just caring about what Yahweh said and just bringing them up in context of what Yahweh said, I'm no longer a target. And as no longer a target, there's no reason to shut us down.
Yeah.
And so being less of a target, I thought, was beneficial in this regard. And it was a huge part of the reason I stopped doing Shattering Myths. I thought that that we would be under their radar. They would not care what we have to say, and they would have no reason to shut us down.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on it.
That stuff is probably still be available. I just wondered about all the war stuff.
And lastly, I want to share one other thing. That when I began this, I told Yahowah that I'd be glad to, in fact, enjoy doing the research and sharing the insights that I gleaned along the way. I find that really fun. So long as we work together on it, that I would devote myself to doing that, and I would enjoy doing that. But I said I'm not going to be responsible for disseminating
making it all come through.
Right. Well, no, just disseminating the information.
Well, you know, I mean,
drawing people's attention to it, making it available to people. I did not want any part of that. I said, if we're going to do this, that's your responsibility. I have nothing to do with that. That is your responsibility. And Yahowah said, fine, that's the way I'd want it to be anyway. So I have always figured that Yahowah was going to take what we have learned, what we have said, what we have written, and he was going to convey it to his people because it is in their interest to know what he has to say and his interest for them to know, and that he's going to work that out. And it's not my responsibility, not my worry, to figure out how he's going to do it.
Yeah.
So the fact that the site is mirrored so many different places, the fact that it's this program and the books are presented in so many different places around the world and in so many different ways, I'm confident that he will use them to reach his people as he sees fit. I'm not going to stress over it.
No, I was just it's more of a curiosity question. I'm trying to, oh, well, how is that a problem, or how could that work? And it's just curiosity to me, because we obviously know it's going to happen.
Yes.
So we'll find it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
yep.
phenomenal.
Yeah, they will find it.
Listen.
They will. And if they
be
find
happy,
it,
don't
somebody else
don't
does
get
a better
tired
job.
of this. Be happy, because this is vital to a lot of us. We love this stuff.
But you know, if somebody comes up and does a better job, somebody has a better attitude and a better approach and more knowledge and better understanding and greater skills and doesn't have so many flaws, I'm not threatened by that. That's wonderful. I'd gladly step aside. I'm happy to do so. I'd rather, I'd enjoy being the beneficiary.
Yeah.
So this is not a contest.
No, it's
one
not.
versus will. This is do what Yahowah wants done, and continue to try to do what he wants done, for as long as we are useful.
Yeah. Well, you have an incredible skill set, and we all enjoy it. If they don't tell you all
and lots of flaws, as one of my good friends pointed out in an email to me, lots of flaws. I'm not accommodating of anything that
certain
is
things,
contrary to Yahowah.
Anti-Torah, anti-God, anti-Yahweh.
No, I'm not patient.
Right.
No,
and I'd be disappointed if you were.
Right.
No.
So there's some. I've got my flaws, and but I do think that we have come to know a lot of things that are extraordinarily important and beneficial, not only to us, but to the chosen people.
Yeah. Well said.
So we will carry on for as long as he will have us.
Yes, indeed.
He's going to have us for all eternity, because as we learned from Node, once you've accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant and you're carrying the Torah, he can't keep you out of his home, because he's made a promise to accept us. So we're going to be with him forever, regardless. But Dode came to be Dode's the most beloved son, but much of his life was squandered in terms of helping anyone. And I would prefer that ours is not.
Yeah. So we all.
Dode contributed infinitely more than I will ever do in the first part of his life. So it's not like we're outperforming.
No, it's not a competition. We just family sharing what's already been written.
But I just assume not be sidelined because of my own stupidity.
No, I mean I enjoy the emails.
Attitude.
Yeah, the emails from you and Roy and many of the others.
It's amazing too that so many people now are coming up with insights that wow, I just say, wow, that's really good. I like that. Most recently, Fred and Lisa have just been a wellspring really interesting ideas, like Lisa's analysis of that of the wild ass of Arabia. When Yahweh was using that as the metaphor to speak of today's Muslims. And, oh my goodness, that it was never been controllable. This wild ass, and it's so different than any other donkey. And her analysis of the history of that particular word and that particular animal and where it came from, brilliant stuff. You know,
yeah, it really was.
Is a really smart researcher.
I was impressed.
Yeah, and Fred just has this ability to say, you know, I think that this viewpoint is proven because of something Yahweh said here, and you look at that and say, oh, wow, yeah, that really is smart.
Cool,
Can't argue with that. That's really good. So, the family is coming up with a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have fun on this. Roy's nature is, I think we'll have fun on this analysis of Towrah, free will, and the nature of Malak.
Or the Malak.
Right. You know, and it may end up being like JB and my.
You may have to just say,
a different view on the timing of when the Pesach lamb comes into the house and when we should be celebrating Pesach. I love his explanation and I love his analysis and I dearly love him and we disagree. We don't disagree on the important part, which is the purpose.
No, and everybody shows up at Pesach.
Right. We all celebrate and have a great time, and I think my relationship with him is better because we disagree on this at one point. Now I can't find anything else I disagree with him on, but that's one point, and I'm glad we do.
All right.
And,
give it time.
Yeah, and Roy happens to be very much like JB in that regard. We can agree to disagree on a detail.
Yeah.
And it actually makes the relationship better because the way that we respond to one another in that regard.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful. Everybody's free to throw their ideas out. And
we don't want to all be the same.
Share it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, in conclusion, one of the things I do want to say, if you listen to the archive, is that while Larry has chosen, what I asked Larry is that if he is willing to stop promoting what I consider to be fake news and conspiracy, my strong preference would be that he continue to contribute on this program because I enjoy his contribution. I think when he speaks about Yahweh, he is really, really effective. And I like his no-nonsense approach. I really enjoy his company. I consider him one of my favorite people in the world. But each time I heard from him, he doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on his conspiracies and opted not to continue on the program. I'm hopeful that he reconsiders that. And that he chooses to, if he wants to believe them, that he just does not promote them or pursue them or talk about them, and any association with what we're doing here, and that he continues to contribute to this program. Now, I will give you an example. I was trying to find the passage where Yahweh says his Torah is Tob, and so I Googled Torah Tob. And the first two sites that came up, which means those are the most active sites for those two words in conjunction with one another, both of them were Larry's Facebook sites. The first two were both Larry's Facebook sites. Says that he's doing very good work.
Yes.
So, love to have him back. No hard feelings. I've shared the reason I don't want to be associated with conspiracy, and I hope he can appreciate that and just avoid it, and then continue to be part of the program because I dearly love him. Everybody that I talk to about him, I didn't find anybody that concurs with his views on conspiracy, everybody loves his contribution regarding Yahowah. He knows his stuff. He is terrific. He is consistently right when it comes to Yahowah. So let's hope he returns.
Yes,
welcome back, right? You would welcome back. I'd welcome back. JB would welcome back.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, unequivocally, in a heartbeat. All right. Well, thank you, Kirk.
Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom to you. Have a nice Shabbat.
Shalom.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye. Good night.